Oh, God.
And then I beat the
Have you heard the middle section of that song?
No, I've heard the whole fucking album.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's the craziest record you've ever made.
It's the first death growl ever on a Muse record.
It's very good.
Yeah.
It's very authentic too.
Well, the
yeah, which is very hard. It's very difficult.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's really hard, man.
It's hard to do that, then go back to falsetto.
Did you ever try and be a screamo guy? Did you ever try and do a chino, or it just didn't have it in you?
It just came out like a high pitched falsetto wail. Like whenever I go loud, that's where it goes.
Yeah, can you imagine how Dave Grohl? I mean, how does he do it? I mean, how is he like night in night out over so many decades? He goes on there and he's just like, well, yeah. Like, how does he do? You know?
I think a good volume of alcohol helps.
It does help.
It really does. Yeah, I've noticed if I'm hungover or boozed a lot, if I go for my big notes, they sound a bit more like AC/DC or something.
When was the last time you did a show with a hangover? Is it even a reality for you these days?
I think I stopped drinking before shows, like maybe late 2000s. Because I did other things as well. Like, and it was kind of like I'd look back at my performances and go, "What the hell was that? That was terrible."
Because it starts out and doing that in front of 400 people, sweet. Doing that for 1,000 people, no problem. Even doing that in front of 14,000 people, I got this. Doing that in front of 80,000 people.
Yeah, exactly. You want to keep your shit together when you're doing that. Yeah. And well, I had to knock booze on the head.
Well done losing your shit on this album.
Oh, thank you very much. So you heard the whole thing?
Of course.
Good man.
It's crazy.
Good man.
It's really, really nuts. It's like I said, it's everything we love about you.
There it is.
On 10.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. Yeah, we sort of went back through everything and we're like, what have we done that we could do better? You know, so for example, you just play Kill or Be Killed there. Yeah. That's like us going like, okay, if we're going to go heavy, let's go heavy.
Heavy.
Yeah.
And the drums on that are interesting to me because, again, and it's no surprise to Muse fans, you guys have dabbled with, different sonic templates throughout your career. Certainly after the first 3 albums, I feel you start to really explore with Dom's drum sounds, bass sounds. You're able to make electronic sounds and music fit well within the band infrastructure. But there's a lot of different drum sounds on this one. It's not like you just you mic'd up his drum kit and said, right, spend a day doing some tracks and we'll see you in 3 months.
Totally, yeah. You had a different kit for everything pretty much. But there was I was really pushing him on the double bass drum stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because that's he's always been a single bass drum pedal, so you can't player, so you don't get the which is like the real metal vibe. And so we got a double bass drum pedal in. And I was saying, come on, just practice that. And like every day I'd come in and go, come on, go, just keep it going. Like
something tells me that Dom at this point in his life, as hardworking as he is, isn't really into practicing.
Yeah, I mean, but that was what was refreshing about it. It was nice to actually find something that like we weren't good at. Do you know what I mean? And like actually try and get really good at because metal. It turns out these metal players are absolute geniuses.
You flirted with it for a long time.
Yeah,
I mean, as a band, I feel like as a band who has achieved the success you've achieved, you've almost been metal adjacent. But this time on this album, there are sounds that make it feel like you actually have committed wholesale.
Yeah, and it also coincides with a little bit of my son Bing, who's really gotten into like Slipknot and stuff like that,
Can go on, Bing.
yeah. And, we'll never pretend to be able to touch those guys, but hearing that stuff blasting on the way to school most mornings, it's like that really kind of got into the album a little bit.
I love that, man. Your boy just went out one day and just discovered Slipknot on his own and just said, this is my
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how kids just grow into their own space and we think we understand them, and the next thing you know, they come home and they're wearing fucking makeup and they're listening to Wait and Fucking Bleed. I just think it's the greatest thing of all time. I mean, listen to this. This shit's fucking bonkers, by the way. These guys are truly like mind-blowingly good, man. Slipknot are truly one of the greatest of all time.
We jammed this riff a couple times on the tour.
You do, yeah.
Just this intro, yeah.
But when it drops in like fucking like it mugs you.
Totally.
It fucking mugs you, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This bit, here it comes. That was literally my soundtrack. That's been my soundtrack going to school for like the last year, basically.
Oh, have a great fucking day at school, son.
Totally.
I love it, man. So the album starts, will of the people, the will of the people, the will of the people,
the will of the will of the will of
the will of the will of the will of the will. We're very, again, it's been a constant throughout our lives together as fans and band for you to try to empower us to recognize the flaws in society and ultimately do something about it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've seen, our generation has seen this huge change. Obviously it started with 2001, and just across this whole period of time, we've seen this thing going on. What is this thing? It's kind of like something's going on in the West. A kind of collapse, a kind of division has been emerging, and now we're dealing with like real external threats. It's like we just feel like we're a part of this generation where something it's going to go down in a major way,
And yet you live here still, and you could live anywhere in the world. And I'm here with you.
Come on, I think you've got the edge. I like being close to the edge. You know what I mean? It's like something about LA, something about California. You just really are. You're literally on the edge of a massive tectonic plate. Do you know what I mean? There's that, but it's also just full of risk takers and just crazy people.
I agree.
I love it. Yeah.
I agree. It's funny. A lot of my friends left in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, I went the other way. I stayed here.
I stayed. And I remember when a friend of mine who moved back to New Zealand said, you have the most precious item on the planet right now. You have a New Zealand passport.
That's true. It's true. You could have.
Why aren't you using it?
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like half of the tech industry has moved to New Zealand, haven't they? I mean,
and it cost them a pretty penny, but I'm sure. But my thing is like, be part of the solution. Or at least observe and learn.
Yeah, America's where it's going down, like no question. Do you know what I mean? It's like the division in this country is kind of like, if that's not solved, it's like a major issue. Like threats from major threats from outside are going to come in.
Yeah, for real.
And this place could fall apart. So trying to be a part of the solution, or trying to like comment on it, or even give people the ideas of how they could solve it. I feel like that's the way to go.
Yeah, when you find yourself in a situation and the theme is developing over the album, because you are a conceptual band, I can't think of any albums that haven't had some kind of through line. The last one felt somewhat optimistic and searching for solutions and other alternative realities. This one, you're really looking outside your window again.
Yeah, it feels a bit more like closer to reality this time. I think in the past a lot of our stuff's kind of delved into kind of like fictional dystopia, like George Orwell.
Dystopia is actually just a couple of years ahead of the reality.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a huge fan of like 80s dystopian films, and then obviously I've written about like George Orwell books and stuff like that in previous albums. I think sometimes through fiction you can explore things that are maybe a bit more harder to speak about on the nose.
So can you be prepared when you wake up one day and the news reflects the art you wrote 5 years beforehand? And how do you take that? Because it could just be chance, but also
I mean, I don't think it's particularly unique. I think there's loads of artists out there. I think there's loads of people that they just feel it. They feel it inside, and they feel something's not right, something's changing. There's a risk of collapse here, a risk of Western civilization, kind of the empire of the West, if you know what I mean, coming to an end in one way or another. It's had a good run, since Second World War to now, the American empire, and it's like seeing it kind of being threatened, kind of falling apart from within. It's just like a real tough thing to watch, because we all kind of love it. We love what it originally stood for,
Agreed, and I still do. I still believe in it. I still believe. I still have faith that it can come through the other side. But that's, you won't find much of that on this album. So, but the interesting thing for me, and I don't think I've ever asked you this before, is that in writing about resistance, in writing about liberation, in writing about the idea of people taking control of their destiny in the face of conflict and challenge and rights being taken away, you run the risk of handing this art over to people who can choose to take it one way or the other.
I mean, getting to the core of kind of political belief. I'm like, I'm very influenced by Rage Against the Machine. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm a huge fan of them, and through them I've sort of learned a lot of different perspectives. I mean, there's different ways of looking at the word freedom, basically. That's the issue, isn't it? Like, there's freedom, like raging libertarian freedom, but there's also freedom for a person to be able to own a piece of land and just look after their family. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's, like, how do you bridge those two gaps together?
Okay, so I look at a song, I listen to a song like Liberation, and I'm like, that is just ripe for the picking on either side of the fence. And I wonder, sort of, as the writer of the song, look, we all know that it really hurt. It's hurt a lot of great artists throughout their life when their music is co-opted in environments that they didn't intend it to be.
Yeah.
How do you live with the fact, or accept the fact, I should say, living with it's easy, but accept the fact that when you write a song like Liberation, that could be used in lots of different ways?
Yeah, I mean, I see it as I always see it as a positive that if there's people from both sides of the coin are coming together to listen to something or be a part of something, maybe at one of our shows.
Boy, that's idealistic, man.
I know it's idealistic, but I mean, I always try and have some kind of hope that these two sort of ways of schools of thought which are opposing against each other in the US right now the question is like, is there any common ground here that can be found to bring these people together?
What you're saying in that song is that the common ground ultimately is a common uprising.
I think the common ground is that there's a need for systemic change. You know what I mean? Like in the way politics is done, potentially. I think the democratic structure is amazing in this country, but everyone knows the lobbyists and
everyone's lost faith in it.
There's so much corruption
there.
It's
been bought and sold.
And I think the one thing both sides have in common, the hard right, hard left, they both agree there's a massive amount of corruption in the elites. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like that is something that both sides maybe can agree on. So coming up with a new system of how to solve that, I think, is something that could bring both sides together.
It's awesome to hear so much fight and reflection and perspective going on in your music at this point, because as far as rock standing is concerned, you've hit your own elite place. There's every reason for you to check out and to do music you want to do, but in a different way. And yet I feel like you've actually made probably one of the most divisive albums, like thematically, you've ever made.
Most what? Divisive?
Divisive in a way,
really? Yeah. No, I mean, as I said, I don't see it that way. I think I've always been for systemic change in the way politics is done, in the West. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a raging libertarian. I'm probably some kind of left libertarian, if you know what I mean, like a Noam Chomsky type. I think that's always been a general theme throughout. It's I come from a background where my family went through a breakup. My dad went bankrupt, a recession in the UK, single mum, all that kind of stuff. So I've seen what it is to be on the other side of the coin. I've also worked my way up and become very successful in my own right. So I've seen what the advantages can be taken by those who are successful. Trying to stay true to what I felt in that period in my teenage years, where I felt like kind of. I feel like my mum wasn't being supported that well. Opportunities weren't that great for us as a family. I kind of I've tried to stay true to that through the music throughout the whole time.
It's very fair. And you know what? You're right. Divisive is the wrong word. What I meant was kind of more agitated. You're agitating the situation. Divisive would suggest that there would be people who listen to this that don't actually agree with what you're saying. It's the opposite of that.
No, I think revolution is certainly coming. I think that's the bottom line. Is whether it just falls into a kind of civil war and chaos and some external threat like China or Russia takes advantage of that. That's one path. The other path is as a revolution, which is I don't like this path, but revolutions often are replaced with authoritarian regimes of one kind or another.
That's why they're encouraged.
If I had to pick one thing that I'm fighting for is like can we create a revolution? Can we create change here where it isn't violent and it doesn't lead to an authoritarian regime?
Yeah, it doesn't exactly. It doesn't. We don't lose more of our rights in the process.
That's the challenge. That's the path that we have to try and make happen.
You said something really powerful, I thought, before, which was you try to hold on to that feeling that you had in your teenage years when your identity was under threat, ultimately because circumstances out of your control were guiding you down a path you didn't understand.
Yeah, there's definitely, I've seen what it is to see my mum struggling and stuff as a single parent and stuff.
It's painful because you can't do anything about it. You're a couple of years ahead.
Yeah, and then also seeing like what led to the bankruptcy in the family was like a big, huge recession. Some guy called George Soros was short selling the pound and it kind of put the UK into recession. So at a very early age, I had this whole thing of like, okay, there's definitely some parties at the very top here, like, extremely wealthy, extremely powerful people that are kind of playing games with people's lives. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I've always had that feeling that needs to somehow be moderated.
Well, but you've done it from inside the whale. What's interesting was you didn't try and just continue to throw spears at the outside on the outside of an object that isn't going to feel them. You got swallowed up in your dinghy, and now you lived in the well, and you've made change from inside those systems. You've been successful. You've worked your way into those rooms to have conversations with people who make great decisions and people who make really ones.
Yeah.
And I wonder kind of like, if a big part of that motivation was realizing that actually trying to protest from the outside in to some degree is a little bit of a long and pointless road.
You mean, are you asking like what I've seen if I've been close to people that really are up there, you mean?
Yeah, we're conversing. What ultimately motivated you to not want to reject the system you saw that was corrupt in the beginning, but ultimately get closer to it? Not to say you joined it and did bad.
Yeah.
You've made money. You've been successful. You're an investor. You move in lots of different places outside of music. You're fascinated by that. People who are ultimately traumatized by that infrastructure, a lot of them don't get closer to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of people that go on that journey where they kind of come from nothing, if you like, build their way up, and there's some people which obviously start to embrace that change and that shift. There's other people that try to maintain what it was they learned and what they saw across that journey.
Which one are you?
I'm trying to be the latter.
Yeah. Getting the band back together and making music, it's not like it was in the beginning when you all sort of lived probably within 5 miles of each other, and it was just like those first few albums. That's safe to say that is probably the glory, most innocent time of fun and games you can have in a band, right?
Well, the early years, you mean?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, yeah, because you literally you live together, you do everything together. You're living in a bus together, in the studios, you live together. Yeah. It's like a family, do you mean?
So how did you make it work when you started to mature and grow and decide to live in different parts of the world?
Yeah, you have to respect each other's personal lives, issues. Everybody has moments in time where they're just not that available. People have issues at home, blah blah blah. So you just got to respect that and not let it and not fight it. Do you know what I mean? If someone has a bad year, just don't do the shows that are going to get in their way to deal with what they need to deal with.
Oh, you're talking about friendship.
Well, brotherhood with us, so friendship and brotherhood, but it's like supporting each other. We've all, at different points, we've all had difficult periods where one of us is like, I don't want to tour next year, I can't do this, and you just respect that, do you know what I mean? Whereas I think other bands maybe fight that and go, well, you can't do this tour, blah, 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 we'll get someone else in or something. But
Chris Martin once said to me that, bands aren't supposed to survive. They're not supposed to last forever, they're supposed to have a moment in time and then ultimately they give way to something else and life takes over and la, la, la. And yet it's ironic coming from him because they're into their 20th, heading towards their 30th anniversary. So are you.
Yeah.
For Muse, apart from that respect, what are some of the other ingredients that you think have allowed you to want to continue to make music as compelling as this?
Well, I mean, it is. I've chatted with Chris about it as well. It's like there is something that ties you together if you've been together since teenage years. It's hard to really put a finger on what that is. It might be because you've been on that journey from coming from nothing to being very successful that they become some of the only people that you can actually really relate to and talk about what the journey felt like and the ups and downs. All of us have been through relationship collapses together and stuff, and we talked our way through that. We're now like the longest marriage any of us have ever had. It's basically Muse. Like the three of us are like we've been together longer than anyone. There's loads of other people, peripheral people, friends, ex-wives, and all this kind of stuff that I don't want to say we've left along the way, but the people that have happened along the way. But the three of us, as time goes on, they become the only people that know every single data point of your life. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Well, you're now in a situation math-wise, because I know you love math, and is it you are now in a situation where you're well over half your life you've spent together.
Yeah, exactly.
And every day that you spend together, you're chipping away at the time that you weren't together. So eventually when this all comes to an end,
majority of our lives
has
been us three. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think we're almost there, aren't we? I think we are, yeah.
Well, I hope not. You're only in your mid-40s.
Yeah.
But you're over halfway.
Yeah, but we started we knew each other from when we were like 14. So
yes, you're well over halfway.
Exactly, yeah. So we're already there.
Yeah, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Seeing the guys change as well, but just focusing on music again and watching the changing of watching everyone grow as players. I'm just going to say this outright, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but when you first got together, you were easily the most sort of prolific and naturally gifted of the three.
I don't like using those words because I never saw myself that way, but it's I saw myself as like not good enough to be a classical musician or a jazz musician. Do you know what I mean? Because I may have gone down that road in my teenage years when I first started playing. I was really into classical, but I just wasn't good enough. So I don't really see myself in those terms.
Okay.
There's a million amazing musicians out there playing classical music right now, jazz music and stuff that are just like way better than us. What happened with Muse? Like we came along at a time when, with all respects to the grunge era, like let's just say musicality wasn't necessarily at its highest.
That's a good point. And that's kind of where I was about to correct my point. So for me, let me phrase it a different way and follow on from that observation. When you came out, no one was showing off the way you could show off as a band. Like no one was getting on stage and playing the way you could play.
Yeah. I wouldn't say showing off because I've never really been a big solos guy. But to the point, I think we were lucky that we came along at a time when you had.
Okay. That's what I'm going to call foul because I need the guitar. Pass me the guitar. Where's the guitar? This was what you were like when you used to come out on stage. All right? This was a Muse show in the year 2000. All right.
Okay, fair enough.
What do you want me to do with this? I can do it.
Yeah. But have you seen Tom Morello? I mean, come on.
I know. And we all know Tom, and we all know that Rage Against the Machine are ultimately...
They were a total anomaly. Do you know what I mean? I think they were the only ones that were like...
Their Muse's North Star. We know that.
Yeah. But in terms of like musicality, they were in the 90s, they really stood out. Like
for sure.
Everyone else was playing power chords and like just...
But they were coming from Zeppelin to me.
Yeah.
They're righteous Zeppelin.
Yeah.
They're
Okay.
like,
I'll go with your point. Where are you going with this?
Well, my point is that when I've completely lost my train of thought. That's why I love talking to you because it goes wherever it goes. But my point is that when you came out, like there was no one who could do what you do. There you go. That's an even way of saying it. Like I remember seeing you live the first time in Paris, young band, first couple of songs out, and just thinking, I haven't seen anyone this good, this young, play this well as a unit. Now, watching everybody grow as musicians, what have you learned about everybody, including yourself as a player? What is it? Is it that you get better? Is it that you learn to get worse in order to reach the core of the song? Like, how does it change over time? For me, it's like about songwriting. It's about trying to improve on that front. And that's been a long-term sort of
journey, if you know what I mean. Because I just don't think I was like naturally a songwriter when the band first got together. It's just like, as you pointed out, it was more music. It's like prog. It was very prog stuff.
Right.
A lot of jamming, a lot of just noises and like.
And then trying to figure out where the words
instrumental sections. Do you know what I mean? And I think really like that gave way over time to me really sort of trying to focus on the actual song itself. You know, like what is this about? What is the lyrics? What is the melody? You know, because I'm thinking about the whole thing. Do you know what I mean? So I if anything, I've kind of like let my, let's say, pure kind of like, you know,
ability
blasting out shredding scales and stuff. I let that go kind of a long time ago in favor of actually focusing on the bigger picture of what the actual overall music sounds like, the whole band and the whole thing, you know?
So what's the song that you're most proud of on this album? Is it Ghosts?
That one's an unusual one for us. I was surprised that Dom and Chris even wanted that on the album. We actually talked about it and whether it should go on the album. You know,
why would it not?
Well, because I did like during the pandemic, I did a couple of things on my own, just like kind of just on the piano, the acoustic, just
you
stuff.
Put a couple of things out, right?
And I this song was kind of like in my mind in that world, if you know what I mean, like more like a sort of just me on the piano, singing alone. And but yeah, no, Dom really liked it. He kind of thought it was. Yeah, it wasn't like anything we've ever put on an album before. And really, actually, you know, one of the things we did on this album was we looked at our set list, we looked back at all of our old albums, we thought, like, what's missing? You know, and one thing that is missing is a really good ballad, if you know what I mean, it's like an acoustic track, if you like.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a song called Unintended on the first album, but that is actually like the whole band playing. It's not really a totally acoustic number. Do you know what I mean?
You've never had a song that's just written and recorded and performed entirely on piano. And what really struck me about that was... I mean, the lyrics are tough to hear. You know, someone who's like millions of people watched the dynamic of my family change in a way that I can't get close to it, right? I can't be present. So what I'm coming back to is fundamentally different to what I left behind in 2020.
Yeah.
And I really feel like you've captured that beautifully on this song.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, it totally came out of the pandemic period. As I said, it connects directly to some of the other stuff I did during that time. That was kind of like it was lonely by nature. The first time I ever kind of went down the road of like doing acoustic, solo-y type stuff was because I was on my own in the studio. No one else was around, you know? And that song kind of came out of that. So it really is a direct kind of expression of that kind of isolation, the loneliness, and also the tragedy of what's happening for so many people.
There was a lot going on as well in your personal life. You were becoming a dad again. You know, you were forced into a situation where you got the family time, which is beautiful, but at the same time, the community around your family and my family and everyone as individuals on the macro level is fucked.
Yeah.
The community is just like non-existent.
Yeah,
we're not seeing each other.
It was amazing because it was just me, my wife, and the baby. You know, so we had, you know, it was just us. I mean, obviously, loads of other people went through this, but obviously, it was hard being away from our parents. You know, having a baby and stuff, and like, you know, her parents were all in Texas, Louisiana, mine were all in England, and we had sort of just being on our own. It was just, you know, FaceTiming to see our baby and stuff was kind of an unusual time, but it was also lovely for us. You know, we felt very lucky, you know, to have that time and have time with the baby and everything.
Did you go through anxious periods during this time? Do you suffer from anxiety? Do you get the stomach churn and things like that?
I mean, I get not in a serious way. I'd say work related sometimes, if you know what I mean. Like sometimes I see a tour getting booked and I'm like, oh, blimey, I've got like 50 shows to do. It's like, you know, and if actually, you know what gives me anxiety is sometimes I'm a bit of a, you know, flying. Like, I'm not a great flyer.
Yeah, I'm not a great flyer.
Yeah. We were talking before about you were talking about some artist or something to do with the VMAs or whatever, but it reminded me of the one time we had that moment where we won the new band award at the NME Awards. I may have told you this before, but we had this little, it was the only time we ever took a little propeller plane. We had a gig, we were opening up for Bush in Germany, but we had to go and get this award. Record label got this little plane. As it was going down the runway, like one of the engines blew up, and it was like went on fire and skidded off the runway. And like ever since then, I've been like, I'm just sketchy in planes.
Private planes are
yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, so no more of that.
So you don't fly private?
We do when it's all of us in the crew, like and a large group, if you know what I mean.
And
on the last tour, it's like you're talking about like 50 people on a plane, so it's like, you know, and we take the gear sometimes as well. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we're approaching this time where all that stuff has to get cut down. Yeah.
I've only ever been on a private jet a couple of times, and I've never felt turbulence like it.
Yeah, it's rough. Yeah,
it's rough. It really is like you're in a tin can.
Well, no, this wasn't turbulence. This was just literally going down a runway. One engine blew up, skid off on the grass, and we jumped out of the window with our NME award, and we're like, yeah, welcome to our new life as a best new band of NME, whatever it was at the time. But we veered off top of that. What were we talking about? We're talking about anxieties.
Yeah.
You said, do I get anxious?
I just want to talk about Bush in Germany now.
Travel, like intense travel. Get like that. That does me in a little bit. Yeah.
Getting back to Bush in Germany, I think, you know, there's so much that we could talk about, and we're always going to come back to the new album, but there's so much we could talk about that we've never discussed, just singular moments that just get forgotten about.
Right.
Like, what was it like playing with Bush in Germany?
That was it was a weird time. It was Gavin was on fire back then. He was just he was
one of the world's biggest rock stars.
Yeah, he was a shirt off. The after parties were crazy. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sure if that stuff would be allowed anymore, but it was it was a fun tour. Those guys, I think it was just Germany. I think we did a couple Scandinavian dates. We opened up for loads of people back then. We opened up for Skunk Anansi on tour. That was
Crazy.
great. We opened up for Chili Peppers. It was really cool. We really cut our craft there, sort of just learning from watching other bands playing.
What was your favorite early tour you ever did with anybody?
It was the Chili Peppers one. We opened up for Foo Fighters and Chili Peppers.
I remember because I came to a show in Portugal, and Foos was supporting the Chili Peppers.
We were the opening band.
And you were the very opening band.
Yeah, but we did like a leg around kind of Midwest America. And that was amazing. Yeah, it was really cool. Get to see them play every night, both those bands. It was like that was 99. Do you know what I mean? That was real early days. And I do think that actually changed the way we played. I think before that it was shoegazery, indie, shy, kind of
this
like
is how far we can go.
Yeah. And then after that tour, it was like after seeing Flea doing his thing and the energy he puts out there, it was like we need to up our game massively.
Massively.
Yeah.
And you did. And now, I mean, I read an article recently with somebody. It might have been in the Guardian, said that when it comes to performing live, you are like the heavyweight contenders. If there's a competition for putting on live shows, like you're like a.
Well, we've learned from, in my opinion, the best. I've seen Rage Against the Machine 15 times.
You just went, and
I just saw them twice this weekend. It was unbelievable. I even got a look from Morello. I was very happy with that. Yeah. He gave me a little wave and a look because our seats were kind of just to the side of the stage, and I was like, he was playing Calm Like a Bomb, and I think he might know it's my favorite song, and I was like, yeah, I was like just going for it, and he gave me a wave, and I was like, Tom Morello waved at me.
I just love that we can, listen, the whole life that we committed, both of us in different ways committed to music, right?
Yeah.
This is like you turn fan into fun, and then fun becomes life.
Yeah.
And yet you can still find yourself at Madison Square Garden, and you're just that kid at Reading watching Rage again, except this time he actually waved to you, whereas opposed at Reading, no fucking idea who you were.
I did not get a wave at Reading, that is a fact. It was amazing, loved it. And I still love going to shows. I went to see Slipknot with Ryder and Bing when they played in LA. That was really amazing. That's all. But I saw Lady Gaga actually, and that was I actually am a bit of a Gaga fan.
You're a monster?
I always have been a monster. Yeah, I'm going to do that thing where I say I saw her play in front of like 500 people in DC in like 2007 or something.
But you did.
I did indeed. Yeah. And always from day one, I thought she was just an absolute phenomenon. Yeah.
What do you love about Gaga?
The theatric. Well, I mean, first of all, she's just an unbelievable talent. Okay, like she's she's an amazing pianist, singer. She's better than me on both those things, and I just respect that. And I think she's an amazing songwriter. But then just the way she creates the visuals and the whole theater around the whole thing, I just think it's amazing. Yeah.
It must have felt in some way, shape, or form like someone had actually walked into your room. Not your room as in Muse's room, but the room you were in with a few other artists that kind of weren't afraid to bring some theater and performance and some eccentricity into this, and not just be authentic, right? Like,
oh yeah. No, I've always wanted to delve into like fictional theatrics and things like that with our show as well as the music. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's in. We talked about it earlier on. Like, sometimes delving with dystopia, you can get more of a vibe across if you go straight fiction rather than like trying to say like, oh, like heart on your sleeve, kind of. This is like, this is what what we think politically. But yeah, I mean, she's amazing. She's been amazing at that. Crossing that line between like what is fantasy and what is reality. And I think that's a great place to be as an artist.
Yeah. Have you ever had a chance to kind of kick it with her and sort of share mutual kind of theories and thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I met her briefly. She wouldn't remember, but I met her briefly in 2007 at that show. I think it was Washington DC or something. Mm-hmm. We were touring nearby, and I said, look, we've got to go and see this show. I love this singer. She's going to be massive. And the guys were like, we went to show, and the rest of the guys were like, what is this? Like, they had no idea. But I was like, this is amazing. Like, and I've never told anyone this, but she actually had I think she had 2 iPhones or something like that were made into eyeglasses, like video. And I totally straight up ripped that.
That's where you got that idea from.
Yeah. I was like, cut to 4 years later, I'm wearing video glasses. That's just basically, that is me doing my Lady Gaga moment.
Amazing.
Yeah, but she said one thing to me that I remember was like real weird wisdom that she said to me. Like, we were just chatting briefly, and she goes, oh yeah, I know Muse. She goes, rock, that's a tough genre, man. That's going to be a tough genre. And I just thought like, what was that? Where did that come from? But it was true. So
yeah, because she's a watcher.
Yeah, she knows. She knows. She's a real trend setter. Yeah.
She's the one who would tell stories about going and sitting down with record labels, and they would give her the menu and say, order whatever you want. She's like, I'll have a glass of water.
Brilliant.
I mean, say no more.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what a way to tell a record label, I have the power. There's nothing you can do to buy me.
yeah. That's good. I didn't know that.
She's a cool cat. Last time we were here, we spoke about a song called We Are Fucking Fucked.
Yeah,
that's a great title. I can't remember. I spoke to someone after about that song. Do you remember who came in and I mentioned the song title?
That's the Anxieties right there. There you go. That song literally sums them all up. I think, they're all in there.
Yeah, because it's all in there. It's like a laundry list of like doom and gloom and holy shit. I mean, you've danced around this idea of finality many times, but you've never actually laid it out like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
you couldn't have put one more song afterwards just going... but we're going to be okay, kind of. You had to
Euphoria, the one before that.
It's in the wrong order,
the
man.
False sense of the false sense of security comes just before, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, look at all the bands we've been talking about, like Slipknot, Rage, Metallica, like, we're influenced by, Iron Maiden. We grew up on Iron Maiden, me and Dom did when we were kids, and it's like, we've always been influenced by, metal and rock, and delving in the dark side is what we do. Do you know what I mean? Like, go in there. And you asked about Anxieties. That song is like almost just like one of those. I don't have it very often, but like if I ever did have a moment where like late at night, I'm like, I can't sleep, and like all those thoughts start going around, like what's going on, like all these natural disasters, like all this stuff that's happening, civil unrest, blah blah blah. And it all just kind of like puts you into a panic. That song was written in literally that moment. One of those moments.
What's really fascinating about that to me is being the father of two teenage boys, and you have teenage children. We have to sort of figure out how we kind of prepare them for this reality, and tell them the truth, but at the same time, not sort of leave them bereft of all hope. I feel like you failed miserably with that song. And I think part of preparing is being honest about what's happening. Agree.
Do you know what I mean? Like you don't want to be like completely delusional. I'll tell you, the secret is just watch all eight seasons of Alone on Netflix, and there you go. That'll get you in the right place.
Seriously?
I just started watching season 8 the other day, and it's like, have you seen it? It's like a survivalist show. It's unbelievable. It's the real deal. They put 10 people out in British Columbia. They're all like, say, 50 miles apart, totally isolated. They've got their own cameras, what are those little portable cameras called? Yeah, you know what I mean. GoPro, sorry. They've got all that stuff, and they just literally have to survive on nothing. They've got 10 objects, like a knife and whatever, something else, like a saw or something. And they're left there, and the winner is the one who's still there like months later. The last one standing wins $500,000.
It reminds me of back in the day in radio competitions, back when 80s FM radio was the internet. They would put competition winners on a raised billboard competition, and you'd basically sit up there, and the last person who still up there after like 9 months of existing on like a piece of toast and glass of water would win like a Mini Cooper.
Yeah.
But just a way more modern version of that.
Totally. It's always like Running Man or something crazy.
A little bit. Yeah. So what have you learned from watching it?
You know what? It was a bad segue, because it's kind of like you realize how hardcore these amazing survivalists actually are. A lot of them are ex-military and stuff, and they're just like they really know that shit.
They know this shit.
Yeah. But then but you see the mind game, like we're talking about anxiety.
Yeah.
The thing that leads most of them to go home the fastest, it's not really that they made mistakes or they didn't survive. It's that their mind just starts playing games, and they start to like miss home, miss family. Bit isolation is like really bad. You know what I mean?
Bad.
So it's a really interesting show, seeing just the psychology of these people go from being like confident, solid, to like kind of like gradually like, I'm not sure about this.
So what does it tell you as someone who's been writing about this from inside the womb of society for a long time? What does it tell? What further information do you gain from watching something like this?
I think if anything
really matters.
Yeah, I think what really matters is, jokes aside, I'd say it's that, me and myself, none of us are really that kind of self-sufficient in terms of like the ability to like get through really tough times, psychological resilience, do you know what I mean? And I think that's something that you're talking about kids, you know what I mean? You're talking about our kids, I think it's like, living in tech the way we do, we're so reliant on it all. Like all it takes is like one solar flare, and none of us will know what to do you know what I mean? And so stuff like that, I think having the ability to kind of live a little bit more without tech, basically, that's what I get from the show. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Is that an ambition?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I'm anywhere near it. Do you know what I mean? But I've got I've got like a bit of a military thing in my family. Like both my grandparents were in the military. My uncle was in the military. My cousin's a colonel in the army right now. I've always had this thing of like, I wish I was a bit more kind of like
self-sufficient,
a bit tougher and self-sufficient in that kind of way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think. it's I think it's just a good skill to have.
I agree. Listen, I mean, plants and vegetables. I mean, plants and seeds.
Yeah.
Learn to live off the land a little bit. I think that used to be kind of something that would be leveled at people in a sort of, aren't you a little bit eccentric kind of way. And I think it's actually now a reality.
I think so, yeah. But also, like, again, talking about like the extremes that we see, the viewpoints, I think one of the areas that they link up on is kind of this, against kind of globalization of trade, if you know what I mean. Like, the idea that there is a bit more localized, and
even just
food,
quality
of
of produce. I mean, I don't even know half the that food's gone through before it lands on my table. Yeah,
and again, that's one of those weird things that does actually, I think, to some extent, unify both sides. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, actually, we don't like this massive global production of food, the way it treats animals and agriculture and all the chemicals and everything. It's like, I think just like learning a bit more about that and having more of it done locally would be good for everyone.
God, it's just kind of overwhelming sometimes, though, isn't it? I mean, if I was to sort of sit there and figure out how I was going to make even just a microscopic improvement in the way I live my life to better certain things, I would have to draw like a whiteboard, a list of things interconnected that would take up the entire space. It's a lot. It's like, oh, how is my decision going to affect, to your point, the way animal mistreatment and the way things how's that going to be connected to carbon emissions, and and it's just so many links to things. It can be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah. It's size. Like, size is, maybe it's because I'm small, I don't know, I'm saying this, but size is the enemy. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the thing where, again, like, I'm interested by the things that everyone can agree on, not just the two extreme viewpoints, but size is the issue. Corporations getting to a certain size where it becomes just unbelievably, the shortcuts they take, the way they treat employees, all that kind of stuff. I think everyone kind of agrees that we don't, size, like, how can we moderate things? We don't want to stop people having a chance to create a big business and do very well, but at the same time, there's doing well, and there's becoming $1 trillion company that controls, like, half the agriculture in the country. Do you know what I mean? It's like, there must be a middle way here somewhere. Do you know what I mean? Where we can allow people to create entrepreneurial ideas and do very well, but at the same time have some kind of checks on power and size. Do you know what I mean? And I think the same thing can be applied to politics as well.
Yeah. God, the political system, though, man. Talk about lacking faith. I mean, I think if you asked 100 kids in school right now, I mean, I was a kid in the school yearbook, what do you want to be? It was either athletes, rock star, or prime minister.
Yeah, totally.
And now I don't even think one person would choose politics.
No, that is true. Actually, that's worrying in its own way, isn't it?
It's very worrying because if no one,
the people that do go into it
are the ones who really shouldn't be in it.
Yeah, they're kind of like sociopaths, aren't they? Totally.
How's Dom?
He's doing good. Yeah, he's dyed, I think he dyed his hair green or blue or something.
And he's grown a moustache and a goatee. It's good to see he's finally grown facial hair.
Yeah, he should have dyed that as well. I think it always looks weird to me when you've got like green hair and a grey brown
drummers,
beard. It's
man. They should tell you when you start at rock school that drummers are the ones you got to watch.
Definitely. Yeah, the couple of years away from midlife crisis, I think. Yeah.
It's a couple of years away. He's got green hair and a mustache. And how's Chris?
He's doing great. Yeah, all good. Yeah, he's looking after his brood as always. Yeah.
Living in the UK still?
He's still in the UK. Yeah. They both are now. Yeah, Dom and Chris. Dom's pretty much more full-time UK than LA at the moment. Yeah.
Wow, cool. Good for him.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, he was the one that went the other way. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's why the 2020 thing you're talking about. He wanted to go back to the UK. I mean, like, he wanted to go back there, whereas I went a little bit like, I think I'm going to stay here.
He was drawn to it.
Just sit it out. Yeah, I think when all shit started going down, he was like, I'm out.
Not to try and make you anxious or anything, but can we talk about touring?
No, actually looking forward to it. I've got a few more shows this year. I've got doing a few little ones when the album comes out around October, but we're just about to put together our big tour for next year. So it runs from January through to July. It's going to be our biggest arena tour in the US. We're looking forward to that. We're going to start in Mexico, US, Canada, and then finish in Europe. So it's going to be great.
How does the lifestyle of touring change over time? Like, what are the motivating factors beyond putting on a good show? Like, how do you stay balanced?
Yeah, you go through different phases. When you're young, it's just like the buddies together, just exploring the world. Partying, girls, all the stuff. Yeah, and then you kind of go through. What was it? I had a theory the other day. It was like, I think it's, and then you go through a period of like becoming tourists. You realize, after 10 years, you haven't seen anything in half of these cities. Like, I've been to Berlin 5 times, plus I haven't been to a museum yet. So you start off partying for about 10 years, and then you sort of just become a tourist for about 10 years. Yeah. And then now we're entering the 10 years where it's like wives and kids on tour. And that's actually a load of fun as well, because you've got your kids with you, and all the kids like mucking around together and wanting to go and see stuff. So it becomes more like a family affair. Yeah.
And your kids are old enough now to be able to really appreciate and acknowledge what it is that you do, versus when they were young, when they got those big fancy headphones on their ears. And
Novella's 2, right? So she's
Well,
You know, Bing's like full on into it. I mean, like he gets it. He's down the front, like loving it. But like
when you're playing, he's down the front,
in front of the barrier. You know what I mean?
Now let me ask you.
He's not in the mosh pit yet. I mean, in a few more years.
How old is Bing?
He's 11. Yeah.
He's 11. You got him at the right time. I mean, ours are 16 and 14. I know if my 14-year-old was down the front and I was DJing, he'd just be on his phone like, when can I fucking leave? But Bing's a fan.
He is now. He was like when he was like 5 or 6, he was really into it, and then he thought I was really uncool. He was probably right to think that for about 5 years, and he started getting to more like pop, hip hop, and all that kind of stuff, like what was kind of big, like the big kind of pop stuff. But then he got into hard rock again, and I think he only likes our heavy stuff. Like he likes Kill or Be Killed. I think is the only one that he really likes on the new album because it's got double bass drum pedals. He's actually a really good drummer. I mean, he can actually shred like on the bass drums like like even faster than Dom. I mean, it's not necessarily the tightest thing I've ever heard, but it is like he can just literally do it. Do you know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think about their future in terms of like the life you've lived in music and the changes you've seen when you started to now? You got a seat on the Elfin ship with Gandalf. You got to go to the Elfin Wonderland where money still matters, and you made it. Right. Now it's tougher, right? There's a lot more bands on the mainland with Mordor smoking. Yeah. It's harder. My point, like,
that's
what
for sure.
Gaga said is right. Yeah. Rock, that's a tough business.
Yeah.
So when you think about your kids moving into music, are you sort of just hands off with that and like they'll figure it out?
Well, I mean, Ryder's interesting. He's like 18, right? So he's in a band. I'm going to go and see him play on the 20th just around here. So it's interesting hearing his perspective because like, you know, I don't know. I think some of these younger kids, like, they're not as like ambitious and they're like, got to make it massive in the big world. They really appreciate, what it is to just have a group of friends and play great music together. I'm not sure if it's like a sort of, is it Generation Z? What is that generation? Like 18-year-olds?
I think we're back to A, aren't we?
Yeah, back to A again. Yeah, whatever that generation is. Like, I feel like there's something going on there where they are kind of resisting a little bit of the kind of social media sort of seeking attention and being big type thing. It's like I feel like there's something going on there. I mean, I just get this filtered through Ryder to me, but I sense there's a little bit of a shift there where kind of it could almost be like the emergence of what we saw, like a different version of what we saw in the early 90s, you know, like where, you know, the early days of grunge and stuff.
I agree. You know, Jackson, who's 16, he loves the process.
Yeah.
And every time that he'll post something, which is rare, and I worry if it doesn't hit the algorithm and find the audience. Right. I go into that, like, is he going to be devastated? And he's like, on to the next one.
Yeah.
On to the next one. It's like there's a certain, and I'm not saying this for every kid. I know social media still plays a huge role in heightened levels of anxiety and depression amongst, in particular, teenagers. But within the arts, it seems to have kind of plateaued and reached some kind of saturation point where it just doesn't have the power it used to.
I think so, yeah. I think there's a younger generation now that are looking to be a bit maybe out of it. You know what I mean? Like in a bit sort of like, you know, they can see through it for what it is. It's just massive attention seeking and selling products and all that kind of stuff. You know, my generation was like, I'm still like, I don't really get what this is all about. I still, I do it, do you know what I mean? But I still don't really like it. I don't really get it. It just feels cheesy to me. It feels embarrassing. It feels like...
Well, yeah, that's because you and I are from the same generation. I'm a couple of years older than you, but I'm sorry, mate, you're on the same boat in the same ocean. and we were brought up to some degree to crouch at the bar.
Yeah.
We were taught to let our work speak for itself.
Yeah.
And our success arrive organically.
Exactly.
Not to overstretch ourselves into
100%.
a place where you're showing off for attention.
100%. Yeah, that's it. That's like the whole 90s thing, I think, was about that, you know? And I feel like, I hope that. I think like a younger generation that's coming through is maybe resonating with that way of thinking a little bit, you know?
1991 to 1995. That was it.
That was it, yeah. That was the period.
That was the period where it could have if it had just stuck.
Yeah. I kind of feel like it rolled on a little bit after that.
Tiny.
A little bit, but that was the real core thing. It was keeping it real, no pretentiousness, like just wear what you want, be what you want, say what you want, and just kind of like, it was just people playing music together for the fun of it, really. Like, you know, then obviously Nirvana and a few other bands like absolutely blew up because it became a scene, and that kind of changed the whole thing.
I'm so glad we're still here, man. You and me are able to talk about your music.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a while. They were asking me in there, like, when did we first speak? Were you at XFM?
I was at XFM.
Is that when we first spoke then?
Yeah, I think the first time we ever spoke was on the first ever music you put out, and I went to Paris and you did a show with Soax.
So we're talking 2000 or 99?
99.
Yeah.
Early. Very early on. And maybe we did a quick thing on XFM even before that, but...
23 years.
Oh, my Lord. And I remember, because the UK didn't know what to do with you at first.
Oh, I'm not sure they still do, really.
I don't know. A few Wembley stadiums and a lot of fucking, and 3 headline ratings, 3 headline Glastonbury's. I think you're okay. But it was funny, that it took everybody a minute to figure it out. But yeah, I never forget that time you came on stage to Knights of Sidonia at Wembley Stadium and thinking, wow, the weirdos won.
For a minute we did, yeah. And you were the DJ right there.
I was the
DJ,
man. I got to go out and play.
That was a great night, yeah.
It was a kind crowd.
Wow.
Speaking of Reading and Leeds, man, before we go, I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about how great Reading and Leeds is, because we've just seen a couple of bands make what I think is and I'm not one to judge, man, right or wrong. It's your career. You do what you want. But I think they got bad advice. Going out and playing at the VMAs instead of choosing the festival where you're going to reach a lot more people and give people a memory that they may go on and form bands out of. No one's going to do that watching you mime at the VMAs.
Yeah.
So rather than get you to weigh in on that and choose a side, I just wanted you to talk about your experience of Reading and Leeds, because I'm not sure that Maneskin and Jack Harlow truly understand how fucking great it is. Yeah,
so what happened? Did they both pull out or something? Is that what happened?
They both pulled out, and the problem is that they both pulled out and then went straight on the record and said it's because of the VMAs. And it's you're choosing commerce over fan, and that's fine. Sometimes you have to do that. But
so that must be the generation before Generation A that we were talking about. That's the Z, isn't it?
I think
is that the Z or something else, or the Y? That's not a good decision in my opinion. Yeah.
I agree.
Yes, I would never have done that. And I think, but then again, to sympathise with the situation, I don't know what deals they're on. Some of these bands are on. I just, I don't know. I'll make sure my comment's not wrong here.
Yeah,
but,
me neither.
But a lot of these newer bands have gone like these 360 deals where the label owns a piece of everything. Do you know what I mean? They own a piece of your merchandise, your touring, everything. And so when they make decisions, it's like.
So ultimately, you're saying they have a controlling decision.
I don't know.
No. But it can happen that way. Is my point.
I'm saying it can happen that way. I'd be surprised if they were on a deal like that. But if they were, that might explain why whoever made that decision for them has a lot of power. Do you know what I mean?
I just think, what makes me sad is, and I think it's less so for Jack Harlow because he'll run around and there's a lot of opportunities for him that exist in a more of a meta space. But Maneskin are coming from a place of real legacy. They are a brilliant rock and roll band. Yeah. I've gone on the record and said that, they're kind of helping me make up for all of the really misplaced judgment I gave to the Darkness first time.
Right, yeah. That's a really good call, actually. Yeah.
I was not kind to the Darkness when they first came out, and
it's a good comparison.
I look back on it now and I think, can get over yourself.
Maybe they were ahead of their time.
Yeah, totally they were.
Yeah.
And so I look at Maneskin now and I'm like, I learned from that. I go, Maneskin are a great fucking rock band.
Yeah.
Maneskin need Reading and Leeds, a moment at Reading and Leeds in their legacy.
Absolutely.
And this was the year to do it.
Yeah.
And now, when they go back, that first 10 minutes could be tough.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like, is this just us remembering what created these whole scenes in the early 90s? Because Reading back then was a completely different beast to what it is now. But you might be right. That mentality, me and you share that, which is like having an element of authenticity, sticking to your commitments, sticking to your fans, especially the real ones that are paying to come and see you in a show.
Yeah.
It's like that should always come above some kind of promotional activity, like playing a.
Look, go and give MTV their flowers, man. But I just know Maneskin would have run that festival. They would have been the moment of that festival. They would have had the best performance of the whole fucking weekend.
Absolutely.
And 80,000 people would have walked away going, that's my band.
Yeah.
And now you got probably 80,000 people either going, who are they, or them.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's like it could work in their favor, but who knows?
I'm so glad to see you. This album is really a triumphant music experience.
Oh, thank you.
It doesn't let up except for the rare moment that it lets up for the first time in your entire career.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And I just think on to the next thing. Not just as hungry as ever, still loving the experience.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've still got ideas and things we want to do that we haven't done yet. So we're excited for the future.